guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today, we're talking Dirty John. This is part 4. So, on the Netflix, it's called Shrapnel, and on the podcast, it's called Forgiveness. So, if this is new for you, definitely go back and watch the first 3 because this has been so riveting to cover and to dig back up and to talk about all the facts surrounding this. What I like to do is talk about what really happened and kind of compare it to what's going on Netflix. And I gotta say, I say it every time, they got really close. A lot of details from the original people involved in the story match up to what they show in the Netflix special. Now, the same guy who put out the podcast, Chris Goffard, put out this show as well. So he did a great job. I gotta give him all the credit because he's interviewing people in the Netflix show and then, in the podcast. And then again, he shows mostly exactly what happened in the Netflix show. All right, let's get into this and pick up where we left off. Before I do, if this is something that interests you, we do have a lot going on Patreon. Check it out. This was picked by Amanda. Huge shout out to Amanda. She's done excellent picking. I love her choices. We've had a lot of fun going back over Dirty John. Maybe fun's not the word. We've discovered a lot going back over Dirty John. And over at Patreon, we're covering everything from the original Sex and the City series to Always Sunny. And then, of course, my top tier gets to pick what we're watching. This is Amanda's pick. Again, Amanda, you're amazing. Thank you for all the support. I couldn't do this without you. I really appreciate you. Let's get into Dirty John. Okay, this would be the part where I would put pictures up normally, and we're going to get there, but I feel like I need to get this off my chest here. This episode is the most difficult for me, and the reason is because I remember feeling this way when I've listened to the podcast twice. This is my 3rd listening, and I've seen this show once. This is my 2nd viewing, and I have very strong feelings about this part of what goes on. I'm going to choose my words carefully, but also I've got to tell you my truth through all this because that's what I do. Sometimes you guys disagree with me. Sometimes you don't. It's cool. We can all still be friends, but I got to tell you how I feel about this. And this part really, really bothers me. Okay. So Debra's mom is the one that's mostly featured in this episode. And it really goes into the whole Cindy of it all. And if you don't remember, Debra had a sister named Cindy. I believe it was, was her older sister? It doesn't matter. She had a sister named Cindy. And she got married when she was 18, increasingly frustrated with the marriage, and ends up leaving, his name's Bobby, and just as they are finalizing things, she's sitting at a table, signing papers and checks and whatnot, and he takes her out. And they talk about it in detail, and this whole story is awful, right? But this part just really, really bothers me. So I'm going to do my best with this, but I'm telling you, this mom really, really bothers me. I have a visceral reaction to this. I really do. I know she suffered an unimaginable tragedy losing her daughter this way, and nobody knows how they'd react in a situation like that. So, I'll preface it with that, but I gotta tell you the truth. It bothers the shit out of me. I actually hate this woman. I do. I just hate her because she is so forgiving of what her former son-in-law did and so quickly willing to forgive. To me, I just read it as disrespectful to her daughter. And yes, you can make the argument that she did it for her own sanity, but fucking A, it's like she was bending over so backwards to be nice that she never could admit what a monster he was. And I don't know. I really have a problem with this part. I really do. And I guess I'm saying all that to say her mom bugs the piss out of me, and Debra bugs the piss out of me. And yes, I always get comments, don't victim blame. I'm not trying to. I'm just telling you how I feel, and how I feel is, I don't know, that mom set such a horrible example about letting people get away with things that, I mean, are we shocked that Debra kind of did the same thing? And I mean, but it's not her mom's fault. It's Debra's fault for being an idiot. I'm not talking about overall. Yes, John totally conned her, but I'm saying Debra at some point became a willing participant, because this episode, more than any, she found out so much more about his past. She went through hundreds of pages of restraining orders, and I mean, things that I totally forgot about. Like, he was sending, oh God, what was it? He would date women. He would get them, persuade them, whatever, to sending him nudes. And then he would send them, they said this in the podcast, this really happened. He would send them to where their kids' school was. You know, he'd send them to the kids' school to blackmail these women. He would basically torture these women. He would, if they didn't do exactly what he wanted, how he wanted them to, and give him money or whatever it was, he would blackmail them in such a horrible way by, I mean, they kept bringing up the nudes thing, sending it to their families, their children, just the most disgusting things you can think of. I hate this guy with every fiber of my being. And so Debra found out all this stuff. She saw all the restraining orders. She talked to PI. That's how the podcast opens up, is her talking to this PI about all the terrible things he's done. And she was finding out things from Shad, her nephew. So I'm jumping around, but Shad is the surviving son of Cindy. And, you know, Shad's been through this terrible, oh, by the way, they call him Toby in the Netflix show. They only change a few names, and that's one, and I don't understand why, but whatever. I'm going to call him Shad. Shad went through this terrible tragedy. He's always been close to his Aunt Debra. He's trying to tell her how John's threatening him. She knows it, but she won't take it in. There comes a point where Debra has to take accountability. This is it. And she just won't. She just, you know what I mean? Like, you think she's going to be strong. She gets an apartment, but she won't do it. She won't cut it off. I know, we're 7 minutes in. I'm going to get into this, I promise, with the pictures. I just had to get that off my chest. The mom bugs me. Debra bugs me. Obviously, I hate John. That goes without saying. But I have to point out their shortcomings too, because there just comes a point where you have to trust your gut, look out for yourself, listen to your family, whatever it is. And they just didn't do it. Okay, so we start off the episode with okay, let me say this. This episode is kind of frustrating because there's a lot of time jumps in this one. And I prefer when they focus more on John, but instead they focus more on the Bobby of it all. Bobby, Cindy, here's Cindy. And kind of showing, I felt like they were showing us what bizarre reaction the mom had without saying, hey guys, isn't this weird? You know, because I don't want to be assholes to other producers, but all I can think of is, this is weird. Cindy is telling her mom how controlling Bobby is, and this really happened in the podcast. They talk about it. He wouldn't let her wear bathing suits, specifically bikinis. He wouldn't let her go to the grocery store by herself. You know, just all these horrible, abusive, controlling things. She was trying to tell her mom about it, but all mom could say was like, oh, honey, Bobby's such a nice boy. Don't you want to work it out? Oh, this is so awful. Don't break up with him. You know what I mean? Like, just not having a normal human response, you know? Like, I understand that maybe she would encourage them to try to work it out in general, but when you find out somebody's been controlling and abusive, don't you at some point let that go and say, you're doing the right thing? You know, you have a child, you need to look out for the kid, whatever it is. I have a real problem with this. Okay, we go to Jacqueline and Debra. Again, she's referred to as Veronica, but her real name was Jacqueline, so I go with Jacqueline. Okay. They're at the parole officer. John has been in so much legal trouble. They find this parole officer to see if there's anything he can do about what John has been doing. And basically there's not. John technically hasn't broken the law again since he's been out. So there's really nothing he can do. Debra's a zombie through the whole thing. This whole episode, it really bothered me because I want her to fight and she just doesn't. She just doesn't have it in her. She just can't be bothered. I don't know. She's found a place. Because the PI had recommended go find a place that John won't know, pay in cash. So she did that. Again, flashbacks to the mom. So the whole thing is the mom would give piano lessons to kids. Cindy called and said, hey, Mom, I want to come have lunch. I want to speak to you, about all this that I'm going through in my marriage. And she's like, yeah, great. Of course, Cindy never shows. We go back to present day, and Debra is over at Mom's. I'm trying to make this better than it was. I don't love this episode. The flashbacks honestly took away from everything. I understand that they have to tell this story, but Debra honestly didn't play much of a role in this episode. It was more about the mom and what she went through, losing Cindy and being okay with Bobby. That whole thing really bothers me. But Debra's crying and saying she felt like John loved her. Back to the past. Mom gets a visit from the police officers, and she's still in denial about it all. I mean, even in the podcast, she talks about she cried, she lost her, all the normal things you would do. You would cry, you lose your mind, whatever it is. But then that same day, she starts talking about forgiving him. And I just can't understand. I can't understand it. I can't. I don't want to. And heartbreaking scenes of her having to tell Shad about what's happened. And then we go back to Debra. Debra's meeting with grown-up Shad and more present day, or whatever, present at the time day. And he brings up what the tragedy with his mom and about how almost like John's worse, because what his dad did, I don't know how to explain it. It was like a one-time thing, but what John has done is ongoing torture of people. But Debra can only think about herself. She's, to me, very self-absorbed because she kept talking about, I thought he loved me. Very weird. Okay, go back to the past. Mom is visiting Bobby in jail. He is apologetic, and this is where things even get more bizarre. She's just telling him she loves him. I still love you. He's shocked. I'm shocked. Everybody's shocked. Whatever. Debra, you guys, I just can't. I can't with this mom. I can't wrap my head around this one. I can't deal with it. It's awful. I mean, it's not funny, but it's just awful. She just, the same day, just willing to forgive is just fucking weird to me. Okay. Debra, so they talk about this in the podcast too. Debra goes to see John with the thought that she's going to confront him and ask him, what's going on? Why all those papers in the office? What does this all mean? What are you doing? Okay. So in the podcast, this is how the episode actually starts out. And she keeps saying he had all these answers. He knew exactly what to say. But I'm saying you're stupid because at some point there's just nothing you could possibly say. He kept saying, oh no, those aren't my restraining orders. It's people with different names. He says at one point, both in the podcast and in the show, basically, it's not me. It's confusing. They got my name, but it's not me. I'm trying to have it expunged, but I can't afford that, so it's just on my record. And I'm like, Holy shit, that's the worst excuse I've ever heard. And Deborah's just like, okay, I'm in love with you again, you know. You guys. Okay, so she's trying to confront him like, you're not a doctor, you said you were. He has excuses for that. No, I had approval, but because of my drug addiction, I temporarily lost it. I'm working to fight to get it back. Whatever it is. It's all bullshit, right? He comes up with this story that his ex, Tanya, pretended to be afraid of him so she could get attention from her current boyfriend, whatever. It's just the most insane, ridiculous excuses ever. And Deborah's just so desperate for love, it seems, or doesn't like herself enough to realize, hey, this doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, so again, we go back to Mom. She's going to see an attorney. Turns out it is the attorney that represents Bobby. When he realizes who she is, can't believe she's there. And she says, nope, I need to talk to you. So he completely freaks out. Then you guys, it switches back to present day. Jacqueline comes over to Mom's apartment, and I know every time I say I just can't with Jacqueline, I can't. You guys say, oh no, she's a great actress, and maybe she is, but oh God, I just find her so obnoxious in these scenes. It's just, I'm struggling. But she's over the top, spoiled brat, and brings over tea and tries to talk to Mom. Mom's phone is buzzing off the hook. Debra is making excuses saying, oh, it's because I'm not at work, so they're trying to get a hold of me. Jacqueline asks, did you get the annulment? And Mom says yes. So this is something else that came up in the podcast. Mom was in the process of getting the annulment, but what happens is she ends up calling it off because this is the same time that she was talking to John. She stopped the paperwork, basically, and lied to everybody and pretended like she was still going ahead with it when she wasn't, to keep John in her life. Make it make sense, right? It doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, we go back to Mom. She is in court. This was the hardest scene of all, so I'm going to go quickly over this because it's just so fucking depressing. I really struggled with this, but basically, Mom stands up for Bobby and says that he wanted to save their marriage and that he loved her so much and that he just lost his mind just this one time. What? Bobby did a terrible thing. I hate what he did. But had he been in his right mind, he couldn't have done that. Holy shit, you guys. She is the reason he got way less of a sentencing. They go into that in the podcast. He ended up getting 5 years and they said it was directly because of her testimony that she helped him. And so he got to go free, and he's since been out and remarried. And you guys, this is where I need your comments because I'm really struggling with this one. I hate that mom so much. I really do. And I don't mean to sound like a terrible person, but it's just how I feel. Meanwhile, the episode ends with Mom testifying in court about how Bobby lost his way. And then they show Debra, who is meeting John as he gets out of the hospital. And that's how the episode ends. In the podcast, it wasn't quite that cut and dry. Again, Debra is in contact with John. She decides that, okay, they've had too many bad memories at the Balboa place. So she decides to get this apartment. They pick an apartment. It's this corporate apartment that they talk about in the show. And they hide it from it's like basically sneaking around. So again, she's acting like a stupid teenager, not telling her family what's really going on while they're trying to tell her how dangerous this man is. Everybody's trying to help her except for herself. She won't help herself on this. It's so wild. It just becomes where it doesn't even sound like a true story anymore. It sounds like a very badly written screenplay. It's just unbelievable that this is all true. Anyway, okay, I'm going to stop now. I really want your comments. Let me know your thoughts below. Thank you again, Amanda, for your amazing pick. I really appreciate you. I appreciate everybody on Patreon. If you're not, check out Patreon. We have a lot of fun stuff going on over there. And I hope you all have a fabulous day, and let's all make smarter decisions than every single person in this show. Thank you guys for everything. Take care. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.